Hey, everybody. Luke Robinson with Locked on Bama. Jarin Stevenson, the 6'10 Gatorade Player of the Year, 200 pounds from North Carolina, has just committed to Alabama. Jimmy Stein should be joining me here any second to discuss this. This is just absolutely huge news for Alabama, literally, as he's 6'10, 200. Everybody knows that Charles Bediako stayed in the draft. Whether or not that's a good idea, we'll see. But Charles Bediako did stay in the draft, so Alabama needs some more size. Nick Pringle, I love him. I think he's great. He's a leaper. He's a fighter, but he's a fouling machine too. So Alabama needs some more big guys. Grant Nelson should be at Alabama as soon as everything gets tidied up there. And Jarin Stevenson now joins the fold for Alabama. This is absolutely huge. Going to put a picture of him up right here. As you can tell, great wingspan. He's got a lot of leaping ability. When Jimmy gets here, he'll be able to tell us a little more. But the thing that stood out to me, and I put a link to some of his highlights down below in the description, and I would encourage you to go check them out. But the thing that stood out to me, and this may be a little cliche, but he looks like a mix of Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney. Like Brandon Clowney or Noah Miller. When I watch his highlights, he moves rather effortlessly. He's got some hops, but he doesn't all the time feel like he has to dunk over everybody. Brandon Miller was a lot that way, where if he felt like he could get to the rim and the shot were more high percentage, if he were to take it off the glass instead of trying to dunk on somebody's head, he would go that route. Now, yeah, when you're a big man, you also have to have a lot of finesse. And I think that Jarin Stevenson certainly has that as well. Again, this kid, Gatorade Player of the Year, looks like he's going to reclassify. In fact, he already has reclassified, it looks like. And this is really just a big addition for the University of Alabama. This, by most services, this kid is a 5-star. So this is something that will certainly improve Alabama's standing, and they needed the depth here. So yeah, this is a big time commit. Seeing some comments come through. Roll Tide from Salt Lake City, Utah. Hey, awesome. Love some Salt Lake. We've at Robinson Iron, we've done some work over there. Let's go. He saw what Nate Oats did with Noah Clowney. That's a great point. And again, I'm going to say, to me, this guy's a mixture of Noah Clowney and Brandon Miller. And it may be recency bias. So yeah, maybe so. But I really, when I watch the highlights, and again, I put a link to YouTube highlights in the description, so you don't actually have to go through the trouble of typing in Brandon Miller on your YouTube Googler machine. But hoping Jimmy joins us any second. I sent him an invite. Jimmy is technically challenged, so sometimes it takes him a little longer to get in than others. But we wanted to go at this right away because this is very big news. And look, the other thing that happened today that was just awesome, we all knew this was coming, right? Alabama-Purdue is officially official. Alabama-Arizona, officially official. And I'd love to hear if anybody's going to any of these games. I'm really thinking I'm going to go to the Toronto game. I've got a son who goes to Arizona State. He just completed his freshman year. And I've been to the Footprint Center there in Arizona. And it's a great place to watch a basketball game. But it's December 20th, so he'll be home from Arizona State. Now, he goes to Arizona State Phoenix. It's all part of the same thing. But regardless, so it would be right there for him. But he'll already be home. So I don't know that we'll want to go back out and check out Bama, Arizona, but Bama, Purdue in Toronto is going to be a must-watch game. And look, here's the other thing. It's a big week for Alabama because, as Brock Roll Tide Roll has said, I'm excited to see where Noah and Brandon go in the draft tomorrow. Look, it'll be an absolute shock to me if Brandon Miller doesn't go second at this point. I think that he's passed all the background checks that need to be checked. I think he's going to be clear there. And honestly, he's a good kid. Anybody who looks at him or talks to him for 5 minutes will understand that anything that I hate to even say what he was mixed up in, because he wasn't mixed up in it. I mean, he wasn't even, it was complete happenstance for him. It was a horrible tragedy, but we don't need to talk about it anymore. So let's go back to Jarin Stevenson. For those who have just joined, and there's some more people who are in now, Gatorade Player of the Year in North Carolina. How often has Alabama gone and gotten a Gatorade Player of the Year from the state of North Carolina? A kid that North Carolina wanted. He was Virginia, who's won a national championship here in 2019. They wanted him, and Alabama goes and gets him. I'm going to put a couple more pictures up of him. You can see, obviously, he's got some leaping ability. Look, you got to get up pretty high to dunk it and then swing almost horizontally to the rim. So, yeah, he's a leaper too. And if go check out those highlights that I put a link to, and I'm just giving somebody else more YouTube views, but I don't care about that. And he can get up, he can jump, but he doesn't. He's got a lot of finesse too, as I talked about. I'm really happy with this. And again, what a week for Alabama basketball. You announced the Purdue game official, announced the Arizona game official. You get Jarin Stevenson, Grant Nelson. All of his stuff could be completed here any time now, and it looks like he'll be at Alabama. In fact, I would be shocked at this point if he were anywhere else. And then the draft tomorrow night with Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney. And somebody else chimed in and said that, they can't wait to see where Brandon Miller goes. Well, Noah Clowney, boy, I've seen him all over the place. I've seen him in Indiana. I've seen him in Brooklyn. I just want him to go somewhere. I would love to see him land somewhere like San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama. I think that's how you say that, who's a 7'5" freak of nature who will go one. And if it were any other season, I feel like Brandon Miller would go one, and that certainly would be awesome. But there's a good article on AL.com. I know a lot of you don't read AL.com some, but they talk about all the high draft picks state of Alabama had. There's never been a Alabama guy or guy with Alabama ties. I mean, the state, meaning you went to Auburn, Alabama, wherever, that has gone number one. Still, Antonio McDyess is the highest at number two, but feels like Brandon Miller is going to tie that. I'm hoping Jimmy Stein can chime in here in a minute. I'm just going to text him really quickly. But the other thing, it's funny. We did a roundtable for Locked On the other night. We do a Tuesday night water cooler thing, and the Arkansas host was saying, he said something. I don't know why. There was a poll about what's the best basketball program. Alabama actually won it, and he couldn't believe it. And he said, Alabama can't get out of the Sweet 16. And I said, yeah, but we're so weighted down with championships, it's hard for us to carry all that hardware through. And his point was, it doesn't matter until you get in the tournament. And I disagree. I'm so satisfied with where the program is right now. I mean, I'm so happy about Sweet 16s, win SEC titles and SEC tournament titles. I mean, these are things we don't do all the time. Heck, they're things Arkansas doesn't do all the time. So I think we need to appreciate what Nate Oats is building here. I saw another tweet just a minute ago that said, since Nate Oats has been at Bama, they've had two lottery picks. That doesn't include the one that'll be there tomorrow. Virginia's had 0 and North Carolina's had 1, I think, since Nate Oats has been at Alabama. So arguably, yeah, Alabama's been the better program. Now, North Carolina's played for a championship, I understand, but they didn't have a great year. They didn't have a great year last year. So they started out number 1. I understand that, but they certainly faltered too. Jimmy Stein just texted me and said he'll be here in a second, so you guys hang on because Jimmy is with On 3, and he's going to be able to give us a little more perspective about this. So I'm just sitting here trying to take in some of these comments. Brock says, I'm excited to see where Noah and Brandon go. Static God Dread. Okay, there's a name for you. Jay Barker, roll Chevy roll. Okay, I'm down with that. George Scott said he's going to love T-Town, Titletown. Just think how Nate could recruit with a new arena. It says D.E. Alexander. Hey, I'm right there with you, right? It would be awesome if the new arena were like on the precipice of happening. The problem is, do you want a new arena or do you want better players? I think all your money, one way or the other, is being funneled into NIL right now, any way that you can get the talent. And I would rather have the talent. I want to get rid of Coleman Coliseum like everybody else. I want to implode Coleman Coliseum like everybody else. But would I rather have a new arena with lesser talent or play at Coleman Coliseum with a bunch of 5 stars? Give me the 5 stars. And eventually we will get over that hump of the Sweet 16. But I really love our prospects for next year. If you watched the podcast at all, earlier today, we talked about we believe Jarin Stevenson would be committing to Alabama, and then we looked ahead to the schedule a little bit. I've already talked about Arizona, Purdue, but of course, Alabama has Ohio State on the schedule. The SEC is loaded again next year, and ESPN and CBS have both put out their top 25s. Lots of SEC flavor in there. Texas A&M, I think, is in both of them. Kentucky, I don't believe, was in either one of them. That's weird, but we all know Kentucky's going to be good, right? They're going to have a bunch of 5 stars. Arkansas's in both of them. Tennessee's in both of them. Mississippi State is going to be pretty good again next year. I think they're not going to be awesome, but they're going to be a tough out. So it's going to be a really interesting season in the SEC. And now Alabama's got some talent to really go at it. Look, think about where this team was 2 weeks ago, and what you think of them now. You know, you add in Jarin Stevenson, who's a 5-star. You add in Grant Nelson, who arguably is a top 5 transfer player in this class. You add in those 2 guys who can play a lot of roles, right? They're more of the positionless basketball at 6'10". I mean, they can shoot outside. They got a lot of Noah Clowney in them. I think Grant Nelson probably a little bit quicker, and as we welcome in Jimmy Stein now. Jimmy, I had to get started without you, bro. I'm sorry.
I understand.
It was a big deal, and now I got to figure out how I'm going to get my cool little graphic that I made. I mean, look. There we go. Look at that. Look at what I did. And I even got Jarin Stevenson commits to Alabama. All right. So, Jimmy, you tell us. I've been talking about Jarin Stevenson, how excited I am about this 5-star, this reclassifying Gatorade Player of the Year from North Carolina. We beat North Carolina and Virginia for his signature 2 teams. Virginia's won a national championship recently. North Carolina's played for one. This is huge, huge news, if you ask me. What are you guys at On 3 saying?
It is big news. I mean, anytime Alabama beats North Carolina for a basketball player that they want, that's not something that's happened a lot during history, frankly. And then throw in, not only are you beating North Carolina, you're beating a kid who lives 10 minutes from North Carolina. You're beating North Carolina for a kid whose mom was a big star at North Carolina. Just a month or 2 ago, this kid was going to North Carolina. Nate Oats really worked his magic here. I think ultimately, and what we think over at BOL is that really what helped us out was the fact that this kid's comp in terms of who he's a lot like. Who is he like? He's like Noah Clowney in terms of how he's built, in terms of almost where he's ranked. This kid's actually ranked a little higher than Noah was coming out of high school, but they're really similar players. Noah was from South Carolina, Jarin's from North Carolina. It was Alabama's work with Noah Clowney, improving him and getting him from a guy that ranked like in the 50s coming out of high school to being a one and done, maybe a top 20 pick in the NBA draft. It was Nate's work with Noah Clowney that convinced Jarin and his dad, who's very basketball astute. He's a basketball coach. He knows the landscape really well. That's where Alabama won this, is look what Alabama did with Clowney. Can Alabama do the same thing with this kid? So that's why Alabama was able to beat a literal blue blood like North Carolina, who is not only traditional power, but they literally have blue blood, as you know.
Like literally blue blood. What I've been saying, Jimmy, I've watched some of his highlights before, and I guess it just didn't kick in with me initially. But I watched some YouTube highlights of him before his announcement because I felt really good about his committing to Alabama. I mean, we all did. I mean, we all had a sense. But there is something about going up against North Carolina and Virginia, especially for a North Carolina 5-star, where you're like, okay, we think we're getting him. We've been told we're getting him. But in the end, who's to say he doesn't go, I cannot leave North Carolina? I mean,
right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Sort of a Drake May-ish almost, have so much Carolina blue in you. But here's what the comparison I've been making. I get the Noah Clowney thing. In fact, the first highlight I watched of him, I said, that's just a skinnier Noah Clowney to me. But then when I saw his offensive game, I thought he's a mix of Miller and Clowney. Does that mean I'm saying he's going to have the same impact those two did? I'm not saying that. In fact, I'd go so far as say you won't, because while I think he's awesome, let's remember he's reclassifying. He should be a senior when he'll be playing next year with the big boys. So let's give him a little bit of time to grow before we put a lot of expectation on him. And that's where I think having him and Grant Nelson eventually will be so fantastic, because he doesn't have to come in and take over. Jared, a lot of these 5-star kids, if you're the top 19 player in the country, you've got to come in and be the man. He doesn't have to do that. That's Grant Nelson's job. I mean, frankly. And we also have some other guys. I mean, Mark Sears, JQ. We got some other dudes on the team. So we're going to be fine. He doesn't have to do that. And as long as he accepts that role, and if he will grow a little, I think you're going to see a much different Jarin Stevenson towards the end of the year than you see at the very beginning.
Yeah, we've had some experience with the reclassification thing too with Kyra Lewis. People have to remember Kyra was incredibly impressive as a freshman when he should have been a senior at Hazel Green. I'm sure we all remember that. But he was much better in year 2. That's what launched him into being a first-round pick in the NBA draft, right? It wasn't just right off the bus. He was great. There's going to be an adjustment here. And I do like, Luke, what you said about the Brandon Miller comp. I love the Noah Clowney comp because it's literally what the family used to justify this choice, or at least partly. I think if you're comparing him directly to Noah, what I would say is obviously you got to take into account the reclass. Noah he came out at the right age, right? So this kid, he's a year prior to Noah. So that's going to affect some things in terms of how much we should expect right off the bus because he's a year younger. Secondly, I would say for myself, I would take him down a notch defensively from where Noah was, because Noah's going in the top 20 in the draft because he was almost like some level of, Rain Man when it came to defense. I mean, Noah was a great defensive player, period, right off the bus, and needed some offense, still needs a lot of offense work. I think Jarin kind of flipped that a little bit. I think Jarin might be more advanced offensively, like a Brandon Miller, more advanced there. So tick him up a notch or two offensively from Noah, but ticking him down a notch or two defensively. But other than that, he's a real similar kid to Clowney.
Yeah, we talked about that on the podcast today, that, Noah was a freak defensively. Now, while you're right, I think we're going to lose a little bit defensively. And again, that's no knock on the kid. That is because Noah Clowney was just he just did defense different than a lot of people. I mean, the same way Dennis Rodman rebounded differently. I mean, you can't – somebody might be bigger and stronger and faster, but they have a knack for doing it. I feel like that's what Noah Clowney did on defense. But I'll say this. I bet you Jarin Stevenson doesn't go 0 for 22 streak from beyond the arc this year like Noah Clowney did.
Right.
So,
a little bit better natural shooter. And again, it probably helps to grow up with your dad being a really high-level coach who, by the way, Jarin Stevenson's mom was a star basketball player at North Carolina, not just good. She was a star. Dad played basketball at Richmond and then played professionally in Europe for a decade and now is a coach. So, you have some advantages when DNA, mom's a superstar, dad's a professional basketball player, then you grow up in a coach's home. So probably a little more advanced than Noah, but Noah is just so physically impressive. That's why we're going to be talking about him on tomorrow's show, because, man, if it wasn't for Brandon Miller, and thank goodness we're talking about Brandon Miller being the number 2 pick in the draft, we would be all abuzz all week about Noah Clowney. I mean, he's going to be very possibly, Luke, a top 20 pick tomorrow night after his freshman year, and will rank very high. Not many Alabama basketball players have been in the position Noah Clowney will be in tomorrow night. And I think tonight's commitment is a reminder. Let's not forget Noah. It'll be easy. Tomorrow will be Brandon Mania, understandably. But we're signing Jarin Stevenson almost specifically because of Noah Clowney's impact at Alabama and what we did with Noah. So great timing the night before the NBA draft. Yeah, and
that's another thing that impresses me about Alabama's going to get Jarin Stevenson this time, because his father did play professionally. His father did play college basketball. His mother played college basketball, and yet they live in North Carolina. And Nate Oats was able to go in there and convince them. And if somebody wants to scream, well, it's probably NIL, maybe so. But NIL is part of the deal now. I don't know if it is or isn't. I'm just saying.
I'm sure it's a factor. Let's get that out there. I'm sure it's a factor, but we'd also be pretty naive to think that North Carolina basketball doesn't have a pretty happening NIL collective.
I was just in the research.
Their basketball players make more than their football players, and we don't have that here, to be honest. I mean, so I'm sure, hey, let's not be naive and not think that NIL is not a part of a top 20 player making a decision. But it just shows that Alabama is remarkably competitive despite the competition. But, hey, it's North Carolina. It's not somebody that's not North Carolina. I would think that North Carolina, Duke, Indiana, all the blue bloods, Kentucky, Kansas, Arizona, they're going to have pretty sporty basketball NIL collectives.
I was just in the research triangle, and I'm telling you, that area's got some cash. So don't worry about them and their NIL. They're fine. And if Alabama stepped up to the plate and that helped, more power to it. But I'm with you. I think the real selling point is, hey, look what I've done with Noah Clowney. Look what I've done with Brandon Miller. And as I mentioned, I saw a tweet. I have not verified this, but I'm going to take it at face value because it benefits us. That Alabama's had a couple of guys go in the lottery since Nate Oats been at Alabama. North Carolina, I think, had one. Virginia's had none. So, I mean, and Alabama's won the SEC regular season twice and the tournament twice. They've been to the Sweet 16 twice. I mean, they've done a lot of good. They were number one this year. They were number one overall seed in the tournament. They've done a lot of good things. So this program is on the come up instead of a flash in the pan like a lot of people thought it might be. Nate Oats is making things happen, and I couldn't be happier about it. And I'll tell you somebody else who makes things happen, Jimmy, because I want you to get this last point, but that's Birddogs. We love Birddogs. Birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. Birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. I'm telling you, I just washed the 2 pair of shorts that I got from them. I put them up. I'm like, I'm going to New York this weekend. I'm taking them to New York this weekend. I just love these Birddogs. I'm telling you, folks, I may not have a very trustable face. I understand that. But I'm going to say this. Believe me when I say this. Look at Jimmy. Look at the trust on that face. Jimmy will back me up here.
Hey, there didn't have to be trust on my face. There's bird dogs on my legs as we speak.
Birddogs are awesome. I've seen the commercial for them. I've seen all that, and I was like, I'm so hesitant to buy new stuff because I'm always feel like I'm going to be disappointed. I'm telling you, I love these things. Go check them out. Birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. You will love them too. And if you don't blame me, that's fine. Get in the comments. Call me an idiot. I mean, I got called one before I came up here to do this podcast. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. But Jimmy, you had one more point.
No, yeah, I was going to say, one last comp. The comp makes no sense, but I'll just bring up Herb Jones, who also tremendous success under Nate Oats at Alabama. Coach's son. I mean, Herb's dad coached him, just like Jarin's dad coaches him. And I can't help but think that probably wasn't brought up by Nate. Call Herb Sr. and ask him what we may have done for his son. And I know slightly different position, similar size, by the way. Herb's 6'8", 200, just different positions. I think Jarin's a little bit more of an inside guy, Herb perimeter guy, but similar size. Both dads are coaches, and look where they ended up. And man, real huge night for Alabama basketball historically. And I'm giving a nod to North Carolina by saying that. I mean, we haven't beat North Carolina for a legacy kid that they want very often. And sorry about that. This is what happens in Alabama football. Sometimes, we do this in Alabama football every now and then. We lose a kid that has us upset or scratching our heads, and we have to remember, hey, it all sort of evens out, right?
I don't know that we lose a kid. Like if I were North Carolina, you know what I'd look like this? Old recruit nicks for Alabama will understand this. You know what this is? Peanut Whitehead signing with Louisville. You agree?
To them it may be, but Alabama's had a lot of basketball success lately.
I'm saying if I were them, that's how I'd take it.
I thought you were going to bring up old school. You might remember a long time ago. When I say a long time ago, I think it was a year or two before I enrolled at Alabama, a big forward from Tuscaloosa that Alabama wanted so bad, chose North Carolina basketball over Alabama, probably about 1986. Pete Chilcutt. And it took us about 40 years, but we got some Pete Chilcutt revenge.
We told you we'd get you back.
We got you.
But you know what?
Years, we got you.
And I think that North Carolina with Pete Chilcutt came to Tuscaloosa, and we beat them before an Iron Bowl. Wasn't it before an Iron Bowl?
It was a November, December game. I remember it well. I was at that game. I was a freshman. No, I think I was a sophomore at Alabama, and we beat North Carolina behind a big game from Bryant Lancaster.
Oh yeah,
he was a big part of the win. And Dick Vitale did the game for ESPN, and as big as Vitale is now, he was probably bigger then. But it just shows how long Vitale's been doing this and how long he's been relevant. But it's one of my memories as a kid watching the game there in Coleman Coliseum. Is I was the first time I'd ever seen Dick Vitale in person, and he shot free throws in front of the student section, an hour before the game started, and I remember that was so long ago, about 35 years ago. Wow, that invoking Dick Vitale's name is great on a night like this, because it really is an historic night for Alabama. Not just, hey, we got another good player. That's a big deal.
Hey, Jimmy, I was saying this before you came on. It's really a historic 48 hours, if you ask me. You get a commitment from Jarin Stevenson, who's a top 20 player in the country, out of North Carolina and away from North Carolina, Virginia. You officially announce the game in Toronto with Purdue, officially announce in Phoenix the game with Arizona, and then tomorrow night you got two guys that are going the first round of the NBA draft. I mean, just that's awesome. Kenny Grant just chimed in. Love to get a coach's son. Couldn't agree more. I love to get a coach's son, or I love to get the son of somebody who played a sport competitively on the collegiate level, like Brandon Miller's dad did. I like that a lot. And then Brock says, is Nate going to use Jarin in the same role as Noah? I'm going to say yes, but I don't know that Jarin is Noah could be a banger. He could be a banger when he needed to be. Jarin doesn't look that way to me on the highlights that I see. I think Jarin is more of an offensive threat than Noah was. And he's smoother. But Noah, I'm not trying to say Noah wasn't good. Noah's going first round of the deadgum NBA draft. I'm just saying that a little bit of different.
Yeah, just like I said, two slight notches backward defensively, two slight notches forward offensively. Just a little bit more gifted than Noah offensively. Noah's going to catch up, by the way. That's why they're taking him top 20. Noah's going to be a really good offensive player eventually. This kid will be really good defensively, and Nate's going to help. This is a kid that's going to win some hard hats. Noah practically, you could almost rename the hard hat awarded after games to Noah, because no one played harder. No one was more physical. No one's more willing to mix it up and get on the floor and dive into the seats to get a rebound than Noah. This kid's a lot like that, which is amazing considering how gifted he is. But again, it comes from, parents that played and have a respect for the game. So huge night for Alabama.
And one final note, if you'll notice in the highlights, and again, I put a link to some of his highlights on a YouTube channel in the description, but I think Jarin's a better passer than Noah. If you watch those highlights, he actually throws a few alley-oops on the break. So he's just got, he's more offensively gifted, but it's kind of interesting. You brought up Herb Jones, and it just came to me. Like, you go from Herb Jones, who is known for his defense and known for shooting right-handed free throws against LSU when he's a left-handed guy because his left wrist was hurt. But you go from him, who's defensively incredible, even at the next level, offensively a little challenged at times. Then you go to Noah Clowney, who's a little better offensively, still really good defensively. Now you go to Stevenson, who I think is good defensively, but better than both of them offensively. So, and Brock just says,
you mentioned the reclass too, right? I mean, everybody understands this is a 2023 guy, even though for the last couple of years he's been considered 2024, but he is going to graduate early and enroll at Alabama in time for this fall semester, which is amazing. And it shows that on top of everything else, this is a smart kid who can even graduate from high school early. Trust me, I took all 4 years. I'm amazed they didn't make me do a fifth year of high school.
Yeah, I could have started over. They could have just said, Luke, we're going to bump you down back to the 4th grade. We know you're 6'5", 180 as a senior, but you got a lot of things to redo. All right. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody for subscribing. Please do subscribe to our channel. Please go get you some Bird Dogs, birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. I'm not just trying to sell you on these things. I'm telling you, I swear by them. I love them. My wife's like, you wear them all the time. I'm like, I know, because they're awesome. But Jimmy does the same thing. And we will be back with another podcast tomorrow, probably talking about some of this. And look, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate everybody, and roll tide.
Roll tide.